Coming up next, it's Batman, followed by Dragon Ball Z on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Dragon Ball Z, followed by Bugs and Daffy on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Bugs and Daffy Show, followed by the Flintstones on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Flintstones, followed by Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Speed Racer, followed by Popeye on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Popeye, followed by Top Cat on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Top Cat, followed by Yogi Bear on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Yogi Bear, followed by Cartoon-a-Doodle-Doo on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Cartoon-a-Doodle-Doo, followed by Tom and Jerry Kids on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Tom and Jerry Kids, followed by Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network. Followed by Alvin and the Chipmunks on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's more of the Jetsons Millennium Marathon on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Dexter Special Ego Trip, followed by the Gary Coleman Show on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Gary Coleman Show, followed by the Super Globetrotters on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Super Globetrotters, followed by Jabberjaw on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Jabberjaw, followed by the Banana Splits on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Banana Splits, followed by the Hair Bear Bunch on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Hair Bear Bunch, followed by Devlin on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Ed, Edd n Eddy, followed by I Am Weasel on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Animaniacs on Cartoon Network. Stick around, look what's next. Freakazoid, followed by Beetlejuice on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Beetlejuice, followed by Two Stupid Dogs on Cartoon Network. Stay tuned. Next, it's Two Stupid Dogs, followed by a pup named Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's a pup named Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Super Chunk, followed by Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theater on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Super Chunk continues, followed by Cartoon Network, Cartoon Theater on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theater, followed by the Acme Hour on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Acme Hour, followed by Rocky and Bullwinkle on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Rocky and Bullwinkle, followed by Dudley Do-Right on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Dudley Do-Right, followed by Toonami on Cartoon Network.